What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Blerd Out. One Piece chapter 1134 has dropped. That's right, the final chapter of the year for us is out, and it's a good one. Now, it's going to be controversial for sure, but it's a good chapter to me at least. I think it's a good chapter overall, but we'll talk about it. Now, as this is the last chapter of the year, we're going to be on break until January. So the podcast is going to be on break as well. This is going to be the official end of season 4. We're going to wrap things up a nice little bow, and then we're going to kick off season 5 in the new year. For this episode in particular, we're going to talk about the new chapter. I'm going to run around the last few seasonals. I want to talk about the ones that really stuck out, the ones that kind of fell off. I honestly don't think any of the seasonals have technically finished yet. They either have one more episode or 2 more episodes left, but we're still gonna do a wrap up just to see who really came out on top. First, a word from our sponsors. Thank you for tuning in to Blerd Out. Whether you're listening from YouTube on my channels like Taran King Kumo or Blerd Out Podcast, or one of the many podcast sites like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and more, I appreciate your support. If you want to listen to older episodes of the podcast, head on over to Patreon. If you join as a free member, you can watch all the old episodes from the old seasons for free. Plus, there'll be other content that didn't quite make it to an episode or on a YouTube video that you can check out there as well. Your support means the world.
Welcome to the podcast. Call it Blerd It Out with your host Tyrant. What's Kuma talking about? Talking all things, we chillin' like Okiji. Better activate your Byakugan so you can see me coming at you left, right, up, down, sideways. Reactions, reviews, maybe even let's plays. On this droid boy, trying to make you laugh, make you smile. We about to set sail, so sit back and stay a while. It's Blerd It Out. Blerd It Out.
And if you have not caught up to the latest chapters or episodes, please know there will be spoilers ahead.
Spoilers.
Okay, 1134. So we got a color spread this time, and we're on Super Mecha Frankie. And another fire color spread. It's a giant Frankie robot, but like it is Frankie, because if you look on the color spread, you see all of the Straw Hats, but you don't see a Frankie. That's because he's the giant robot. And it looks a lot like it's modeled after the robot in Egghead. So this is like the future Frankie, where he's upgraded himself to this. The fits are cool. They all have like water guns, and they're just chilling because Frankie's flying over the ocean. I like on Frankie's arm, it says "We are eternal," which is really cool. A lot of the One Piece stuff ends up being "We are" or "We are something." So I love seeing a "We are" reference. I was trying to see if this particular version of Frankie has like a BF number. It doesn't seem like it does. I think it's just straight up Frankie robot. Yeah, it looks really dope. I'm loving it. Onto the chapter itself. It starts off with Luffy being mad extra talking to Saul. So he mentioned last time that he wanted to meet Saul because he had to thank him for taking care of one of his crew. And so like he's got his hand extended like he's trying to do a manly handshake, talking about, "You have my gratitude." The translation I read is, "Long ago, you took care of one of my youngins, so now I have to show you gratitude." Which is just, it's extra. I'd imagine that's not exactly what he's saying, but I also like to imagine that he is being this over the top with it. Because we even have the Straw Hats in the back talking about, "Bro, what are you talking about? What's going on right now?" And as he's introducing himself, Robin cuts in and she's like, "Hey, this is Luffy." But at this point in time, there are probably very few people that know the name Monkey D. Luffy. And Saul, being who he is and where he's at, of course he already knows Luffy. I think just about everyone in Elbaf should know who Luffy is. It seems that they're more akin to his Gear 5 form as far as like knowing Luffy, but they know who he is in general. at the very least, they've heard like rumors and speech of him, probably from Shanks, probably from news, a few different areas. There's a really sweet moment where basically Saul and Robin are like, I finally found the people you were talking about, which is that friends that are there to protect her no matter what. It's one of the things that Saul said that she should go out and search for and keep searching for until she finds. So very touching. Everyone's still crying because of course they're going to protect Robin no matter what. And this actually, it feels like a flag to me. It feels like they're really pushing forward more Robin, right? Because Robin usually stays in the background as far as arcs, storylines. And I know this is more tied to her, but like this entire chapter felt very Robin centered. And I feel like what happens towards the end is going to end up coming back to Robin. That's just a hunch I get. Saul also extends his gratitude to Straw Hats for taking care of Robin for so long and for continuing to do so. Naturally, they're all smiles about it. We love Robin, they love Robin. Robin's a goat. We also get an interaction between Lilith and Saul. And it confirms something I mentioned, I want to say 2 chapters ago, which was that Vegapunk was on Elbaf before. I think Lilith said something about the island has changed since last time, or even the last time I was here, I was still amazed by this island. Something to that effect, Lilith said. And I was like, does that mean you've been here before and like, not just like stopped by, but you actually spent some time here? And yeah, Vegapunk was here at some point. He was there in his main Stella body, so Saul doesn't initially remember because he doesn't know who Lilith is. And apparently, they carried out a cloned replica of Vegapunk's Stella body. So essentially it's like a satellite, how the satellites had all their pieces. This is looking to be something of that nature. And it's something that apparently Vegapunk was already using because he mentioned when he was in Elbaf, which he was there for months, he used this to kind of keep things moving and keep the government from finding out that he was gone. So this was in use before, he packed it up when he went back, and now he plans on using it again. So what essentially happened is that all of the Vegapunks are still alive. From the satellites putting themselves back together on Egghead, York seemingly having escaped with the Gorosei, and now Lilith here with the Vegapunk body. It seems like they just all survived. And I feel like this is another one of those examples where it makes sense in context of the story, but by this point, and due to previous experience, people are not going to like it. Now, if anyone had a reason to still be alive, it would be Vegapunk. And even the Gorosei talk about how is he really living? Does he exist between the realms of life and death? Like, what is Vegapunk? Because essentially what he's reached is immortality. His consciousness exists in a plane that's beyond just a mortal body, as shown by the satellites, as shown by this clone here. So it's like him having a backup of himself makes perfect sense. It makes more sense once you meet him and you meet the satellites. So in this instance, I'm not upset with it. I think it's made pretty clear that the original body is dead, but he just happened to have a spare laying around. Again, people aren't going to be too happy with that. I can understand why. For me, I think it makes sense. I'm fine with it. And it's not even something that he can use right away because Lilith mentions that the tools to properly like bring out this clone aren't here on Elbaf. Essentially, Lilith has to recreate the entire Vegapunk laboratory and then basically take him out of suspended animation after that point. So not only is that going to happen, that kind of gives us the indication that Lilith will not be joining the Straw Hats, which is a bummer. I really wanted Lilith to be on the squad with us. I think to some degree, it was kind of overkill when you think about it. Having someone with the complete and vast knowledge of Vegapunk, plus the engineering skills of Vegapunk in one area, like on our crew, that would be OD. So yeah, it's not gonna happen. But you know, I don't know. We've been wanting a new crew member, and we keep getting teased with like ideas. There was Carrot, there was Yamato, now there's Lilith. And it's like, okay, none of them joined. They all got teased super hard and none of them joined. But at some point, we got to get somebody. There's been too many teases for there to not be a final edition, in my opinion. Now, something interesting that Lilith talks about is bringing back Kuma, because Bonnie says, if I wait, can you make Daddy well again too? And Lilith says, of course. That makes me wonder how that's going to happen. We still have the unknown trait of the Buccaneer race that Vegapunk mentioned. And there's also the idea of the personality switching module that Vegapunk mentioned. So there is some stuff set in the works to bring Kuma back. This one, I'm a little more on the fence about. As much as I love Kuma, because he's my favorite character, I wanted something more solid. I wanted a fitting conclusion to his story, and it feels like this leaves it very open-ended. This is kind of like we got 90% through his story, and they were like, we'll come back to this later. So that I'm a little bit more bothered by than the whole Vegapunk thing, because again, we're dealing with, okay, this character was supposed to be dead, but now they're not really dead. And it just feels too open-ended for me, I guess. And I don't imagine we're going to see a solution anytime soon. Based on the way that Lilith and Bonnie are talking, it's going to take some time. As Lilith and Saul are talking, we actually get to meet Saul's assistant, Ange. Now, Ange is the librarian of the Owl Library. And it seems like she works directly under Saul and helps with basically like the school and the teaching. So it turns out she's going to act as our guide to kind of go through the areas of Elbaf. It seems like the area we're at now, the kind of realm, or at least the space in this realm, is suited to education. Like, so not only is the library here, but like the entire school system, all of like the ins and outs for taking care of the younger generation of giants, it's all held here. And we even get to see some of the giant kids playing in like the water and stuff. And eventually they start interacting with the Straw Hats once the Straw Hats start rushing in. They were supposed to wait for Ange, but they just ran off instead because you know how Luffy and Usopp get. So Luffy, Usopp, and Zoro head off to the Walrus School. They want to check all that stuff out. And then you have Chopper, Nami, Sanji, Robin, and Brook, I believe, going to the library. While Frankie and Jinbei seem to be interested in the tree itself, which makes sense for Frankie, it being Adamwood and that being kind of like the treasure tree. Of course, she's going to be interested in that. Now, as Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp interact with like the kids, the giant kids, they kind of discern that they're not as aggressive as you'd imagine warrior giants. They're a bit more timid, a bit more relaxed about, you know, being antagonistic towards people. And initially Usopp's like, no, it's fine. Like we kind of get it. You're giant warriors. But apparently that's not the way of Elbaf anymore. Based on what these kids are talking about, Elbaf is looking to make a more peaceful name for itself in the world. And this is something that was brought upon by King Harold and something that he was working on before Loki killed him. And like that idea is a stark contrast to how we were introduced to Elbaf, which is the War Kingdom. And as we're interacting with the kids, we actually meet their teacher, Ripley, who immediately is a Class S design. And it seems like she has the type of personality that I find really cool. Like she's laid back, she's chill. I feel like she's a great fighter, but she's also subscribed to the idea of not being in that era of violence anymore. But she explains that yes, King Harold was trying to usher in a new era of peace between the giants and the rest of the world. Even if those ideals meant clashing with the other giants, because obviously you'd be going against tradition at that point. And honestly, my first guess is that this is something that was more of an inside job, where the other giant elders that didn't agree with King Harold either convinced Loki or just really backed up Loki in killing King Harold so that they didn't have to implore that new tradition. And since Loki did it, you can easily point him as the fall man and say, okay, we got what we wanted, lock up Loki so we don't have to talk about it. Because I mean, that's, kings. Royalty is often corrupt. If the elders really wanted something, they're probably going to do it the most corrupt way possible, which means have Loki do it, put all the blame on Loki, reap the benefits. They get what they want, no consequences. However, they do mention that Elbaf has no king at the moment. So either the elders didn't really strive to be king, they just wanted to keep tradition, or there is something more to being king than kind of just being chosen for the role. Now, the idea of royalty is still there, and that's why Hydruden was looking for the Mer no Mi. And if that's the case, it's probably a matter of strength, or at least that's one of the strong points to being king, is having the strength to back that up. Because if it was just royalty or just being, next in line, Hydruden would have had it by now. Now, it seems like Ripley also knows who Luffy is, and again, she knows him as Gear 5 Luffy. So she's talking to him, she's like, this isn't the form I know you, but I know who you are. And Luffy mentions that's his freedom form again, so he's still not officially calling it anything other than his freedom form or when he's most free. And it constantly brings about this idea of how aware is Luffy of that mode. Because it feels like he's a bit of a different person when he's in Gear 5. Like, he's still Luffy, but it's like Luffy with his sensibilities and the goofiness cranked to max. So it's like almost a different mentality. But he seems self-aware of it. I want to see if there's going to be a point where he learns more about what that form is. I feel like Elbaf would be the place to do that, considering they all, in some degree, worship the sun god. And based on what we find in a few chapters here, they should have the knowledge of it because Saul essentially has a library that is a replica of Ohara's. Now, what happens here is that any books you bring to the library get gigantified. So Robin's walking in with the book, and as soon as she hits the doors of the library, the book gets giant. And apparently that happens to any book you bring in here, but they don't really explain how that happens. Just that's what happens. Saul then goes on to explain that he went and got every book from Ohara and brought them all here. It seems like that's what he's been spending the last 20 or so years doing, is just farming books and bringing them back here to preserve the knowledge. And obviously this hits Robin where, she feels, because this is her entire childhood. All of this research, all of this knowledge is what she was surrounded by as a child. So basically she's gotten a lot of the things that she loved the most back in Saul in the library. And we get a really nice panel of her tearing up after just seeing all the books. I would like to know how this library works. Why does everything get gigantified? And it's one of the things where it's like we have things like the Rainbow Bridge. We have things like the Mist Cloud, things like this library. There seems to be a lot of magic happening. And the giants don't really have a clear explanation for it. And I can't tell if we're building up to something with that or if we're kind of just waving it over. Because we could very well be leading to like someone has devil fruit powers, multiple devil fruit powers. The tree could be exhibiting devil fruit power symptoms. You know, if devil fruits happen to come from this tree, you never know. But there's just a lot of magic going on in Elbaf. So I do want to see if we get an explanation for that. After the library, we cut back to the underworld, and we have Loki talking to someone over a transponder snail. And it seems like this is a normal occurrence. They seem to just be chatting, you know, every now and again. And Loki is talking about how this person who's on the other side of the transponder snail went through a terrible experience. Now, the transponder snail seems to be, it looks like kind of an old man, has a long beard and mustache, but it also is labeled as cold resistant. I don't know if that's part of like the cold resistant or if that's part of the person who is on the other side of the snail. So it's hard to say if that really gives us any clues as to who he's talking about. Now, Loki refers to them as Mosa, and based on the event that happened, Loki said he would have basically razed the entire place to the ground. For some reason, this makes me think of God Valley. I don't know why, but it feels like a very God Valley-esque thing. And I think the assumption we're supposed to make is that this Mosa person is the person we saw as a silhouette before. Mosa and Loki exchange like words, and you can kind of see where the friendship lies, because Mosa starts talking about how he can kind of read between Loki's lines. And he's like, you become a little bit nicer. At least to me, that is. And Loki throws a tantrum because he doesn't want to be seen as nice at all. But I think the fact that he's throwing a tantrum means that it's kind of true. And Loki again refers to being freed from his chains, which means he will be free at some point. But on to the final page of the chapter, and one that is gonna have us talking into the new year. Because what is going on here? We see back in the Western Village, where basically everyone was set up at the tavern to drink. All the giants are just chilling, having a good time. But up on the castle, there's a giant flash of black lightning. Generally, that means hockey. But we see two characters kind of silhouetted. They have cloaks, so we can't really see who they are initially. And we see like a summoning circle. Now, the summoning circle is shown to be something that the Gorosei use when they traveled to Egghead. So immediately this makes you think Emu. However, we get glimpses of the two faces of the people that show up here. One of the faces is Shanks. Whether it's the person who is supposed to be like Shanks' brother, or in someone related to Shanks and the God Knights, or if it's Shanks himself, that face is undeniably Shanks. The other person looks to be a woman with her face covered up with bandages, and then she has like little tufts of hair. Oddly enough, her eye is very unique. It looks very similar to Perona's eye design. Not as, I think Perona's is a bit bigger and more expressive, but this person still has like the circle iris with the deeper iris, and then the stick line eyelashes. Who this could be? I'm not entirely sure. I know we're going to theorize on it a lot as this year comes to an end and well into the next year. But when I was talking earlier about everything kind of coming ahead for Robin, the only reason people would be infiltrating Elbaf would be to steal knowledge. Otherwise, there's no real reason to be here. So they're either here to steal knowledge from the library, steal Robin, or steal both. Obviously, this looks bad for the people who don't think Shanks is a traitor. I think Shanks is a traitor stocks are going way up right now, like sky high. So if you haven't bought into that, buy into it now. I think it might pay off. But that is it. That's the end of the chapter. And since Jump is going to be on break for the holidays, One Piece will return after 2 weeks. So again, we'll be seeing it, I think, the first week of the new year. But yeah, I thought that was a really fun chapter, really good read. A great chapter to end the year on, to be honest. Like I said, some people are going to have some conflicting ideas about some of the life or death scenarios in this chapter. Again, I think Vegapunk is fine. I think I would have liked something different for Kuma. I know that that's still cooking, but I wanted to see the full conclusion. Because I feel like if we wait for it, it's just going to be something that's smaller. I wanted to kind of put an end to his arc, and if we wanted to do more with Kuma afterwards, that's fine. It didn't have to necessarily end with his death, but I wanted a bookend on it. That's probably the only complaint I have about this chapter. Everything else was fantastic. And I can't wait to see the reactions and theories because, oh man, Shanks is up to something. But before we get out of here, I just want to talk about some of the seasonals that left an impression. The ones that I like the most. Now, obviously, Dandadan is going to be on that list. Dandadan has been a fun watch. It's been one of the most hype ones of the season. And most hype of the year, to be honest. But it still wasn't my favorite, I don't think. If I had to mark a favorite, my favorite seasonal of the year was Dangers in My Heart Season 2, followed up by Wistoria. Those two are the ones that left the biggest impression on me overall out of the entirety. Now, for this season specifically, honestly, Let This Grieving Soul Retire and Loner Life have been really fun watches. Grieving Soul in particular, I think has been really fun. I like the premise of that show and I want more of it. And Loner Life is just a cool watch. Also, Demon Lord 2099, a good watch. Just fun. I think as far as substance, Dandadan has had the most of this season. Especially when you get to the parts about, Acro Silky, when you get deeper into the relationship between Okarun and Momo. Like it has a lot of really good scenes and strong scenes. I'm actually really excited to see how it wraps up this season. And if I recall, I did see something about the second season already being greenlit, which I'm not surprised by. Again, Dandadan was probably the most hyped seasonal. So the season 2 was basically guaranteed. And based on the list I saw for the 2025 starting seasonals, there's going to be a lot of isekais. And it's interesting because I thought the isekai trend was dying down a little bit. I thought we were migrating, but it seems like they're coming in full force next season. And I'm okay with it. I like isekais. Like, I know it's kind of an oversaturated genre, but there's something very relaxing about an isekai. Obviously, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, but I think the formula has been getting better with the repeated attempts at making them. Because, I mean, you have shows like Eminence and Shadow, which is an isekai that's really good. You have Slime, another isekai that's really good. People really like Jobless Reincarnation. Personally, I haven't gotten back into it quite yet, but people love it. So, like, it's still a strong genre. It's just, it's got a lot of iterations. So hopefully next season brings out some more good iterations. But that's going to do it for this episode. Again, this is going to be the finale of the season. We'll be back next year. Hot new episodes, hopefully some hot new stuff, hot new looks, hot new everything. Be ready for that. There will still be posts on the main channel, so I gotta do a few more top 10s and ultimately the top 30s, so keep an eye out for that as well. But yeah, happy holidays, happy new year. Catch y'all in the next year. Peace.